You moved to Germany because you're running out of reasons to stay where you are. Back home, you've got a degree that qualifies you for jobs that barely cover rent, an ex who moved on faster than your Wi-Fi loads, and a family that asks when you're going to get serious about life every time you sit down for dinner. So, you do what every lost 20-something with a browser and a dream does. You romanticize a country you've never lived in based entirely on Bundesliga highlights, Christmas market reels, and a 30-second clip of someone walking through Alexanderplatz at night with techno beats playing. You buy a one-way ticket to Berlin with $1,100 in your account, a TfL certificate you got online in 3 weeks, and the unshakable confidence of someone who has absolutely no idea what's about to happen to them. Plan is simple. Teach English, learn German, find yourself. Welcome to Germany. Population 84 million. Number of people who care that you just arrived. Your first night is spent in a hostel near Alexanderplatz because you couldn't figure out the apartment rental process from overseas. And the one place 109 that accepted foreigners without a guarantor wanted 6 months upfront plus a non-refundable service fee to the 116 landlord called provision. You read that term 3 times. Provision. You're paying the landlord a fee for the privilege of giving him rent every month. It's like tipping someone before they've served you, except the tip is $2,000 and the service is a room the size of a parking space. But you don't have a guarantor because you don't know a single human being in this country. So the hostel bunk it is. You lie in your narrow bed listening to the guy in the bunk above you snore through what sounds like chronic congestion and a personal vendetta against silence. You stare at the ceiling 4 in from your nose and think this is the adventure. After 3 days of paperwork, polite rejections, and Google Translate conversations that made you sound like a malfunctioning robot, you find an apartment. It's in Marzahn, a neighborhood in the east that the expat forums describe as authentic, which is code for cheap and far from anything cool. The apartment is a studio, which means 1 room plus a kitchen that's technically a hallway with a burner. The walls are thin enough to hear your neighbor's TV, his microwave, and what you're pretty sure is his opinion about a football match. The bathroom is a plastic cube that combines the shower, sink, and toilet into one unit. So compact that you can technically do all 3 at the same time if you lost all self-respect. The rent is €700 a month, which sounds like a lot until you realize that's about average for Berlin, which makes it the cheapest thing in this city besides tap water and loneliness. You sign the lease. You unpack your 1 suitcase. You sit on the floor because there's no furniture and you can't afford any. You eat a supermarket sandwich and stare at the wall. This is home now. The English teaching job is at a language center called Global Path Institute, which is a name so aggressively optimistic it should be illegal. The school is a factory. You teach 6 classes a day, 45 minutes each, back to back, with students ranging from office workers who need English for international clients to elderly women who just want someone to talk to because their kids stopped visiting. The pay is €200 a month, which sounds reasonable until you subtract rent, utilities, transit pass, health insurance, residence tax, and the mandatory pension contribution that you will never collect because you're not staying forever. After deductions, you're left with about €900 for food and everything else. That's roughly 30 a day. In Berlin, a city where a single organic melon can cost €8 and a movie ticket is 15. You learn to eat at Curry 36, a currywurst stand where €4 buys you a hot meal and the dignity of not starving. You eat there so often that the late shift worker starts preparing your order when he sees you walk in. He doesn't know your name. He just knows your plate. In this city, that counts as a relationship. The loneliness hits around week 3. Not the dramatic cinematic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that sits next to you on the train and rides with you from Marzahn to Alexanderplatz and back without saying a word. You don't speak enough German to have real conversations. Your coworkers at the school are friendly, but they clock out and disappear into their own lives. The other foreign teachers are either lifers who've been here so long they've forgotten what connection feels like, or short-termers who are leaving in 3 months and don't see the point in bonding. You spend your evenings in your apartment scrolling through your phone, looking at photos of people back home, living lives you chose to leave. Nobody texts you. You text nobody. The time difference makes it worse. When you're awake, they're sleeping. When they're living, you're working. You exist in a 12-hour gap between your old life and 5:08 your new one, and neither side can reach the other. Your neighbor changes everything. His name is Schmidt. He's in his 60s, retired, lives alone in the apartment next to yours. You meet him in the hallway during your second week. You nod awkwardly and say the only German phrase you've mastered, Guten Tag. He looks at you, and instead of the polite avoidance you've gotten from everyone else in the building, he smiles. He says something in German that you don't understand. You stand there blinking like a malfunctioning traffic light. He laughs, not at you, but with a warmth that you haven't felt since you landed. He disappears into his apartment and comes back with a small plate of homemade Apfelstrudel, German rolled pastry. He hands it to you and nods. You take it, nod back, and retreat into your apartment where you eat it standing over the kitchen sink. It's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. Not because of the recipe, but because someone made it for you on purpose. Schmidt becomes your anchor. He starts leaving small things at your door. A bag of mandarins, a container of vegetable soup, a handwritten note in German that you spend 20 minutes translating with an app only to discover it says, "Good morning. Do your best today." You start knocking on his door in the evenings. Your conversations are 90% gestures and 10% broken language from both sides. He teaches you German words by pointing at things. You teach him English words the same way. Refrigerator, Tasch, window, motto, friend, Freund. He repeats the word Freund and points at you, and then at himself. You feel something cracks in your chest that you didn't realize had hardened. Over the next few months, Schmidt becomes the reason this city feels survivable. He introduces you to the neighborhood. He takes you to the local therm, the public bathhouse, where old men soak in hot water and discuss topics you can't follow, but the tone makes you feel included. He brings you to the neighborhood Sommerfest, the summer festival, where you eat bratwurst and watch kids chase each other with sparklers. He corrects your German with a patience that your actual German teacher at Spätzukunft doesn't have. He tells you through a combination of hand gestures and dictionary lookups about his wife, who passed away 4 years ago, and his son who lives in Hamburg and calls once a month if Schmidt is lucky. You tell him about your family back home, about feeling invisible, about the specific loneliness of being surrounded by millions of people and known by none of them. He nods like he understands, and you realize loneliness doesn't need a translator. You start building something that almost feels like a life. Your German improves enough to order food without pointing at pictures. You learn the train system so well you can navigate transfers at Berlin Hauptbahnhof during rush hour, which is basically a PhD in human fluid dynamics. You find a used furniture store and buy a small table and a floor chair. You hang a cheap poster on your wall. You buy a plant that you name Carl because naming things makes them yours. Your students start requesting you specifically. The elderly woman named Muller brings you homemade cookies every Tuesday and tells you your German accent is charming, which you know is a polite lie, but you take the compliment anyway. You develop a routine. Train at 7:30. Teach until 6 o'clock. Sausage plate at Café Muller. Study German on the train home. Knock on Schmidt's door. Sit in his apartment watching fussball games you don't understand while he explains the rules in German you barely follow. Go home, sleep, repeat. It's small, it's quiet, but it starts to feel like yours. 8 months in, and you've almost forgotten what running feels like. You apply for a visa renewal. Your school sponsors it. The paperwork is a mountain of forms that require your employment history, your residence registration, your tax records, and roughly the same amount of documentation you'd need to adopt a child. You submit everything and wait. You tell Schmidt about the renewal over tea. He smiles and says something you translate later. He said he hopes you stay for a long time. You start looking at slightly bigger apartments in the same neighborhood because you can't imagine living anywhere else. You browse furniture you can't afford yet, but might be able to in a few months. You even look into community German classes at the Bergeramt. You're not just surviving anymore. You're planning. And planning means you've stopped treating this city as temporary. For the first time since you landed, Berlin isn't a place you're enduring. It's a place you're choosing. The letter arrives on a Tuesday. Government envelope. You open it expecting your visa approval. Instead, it's a notice to appear at the Berlin Regional Immigration Office for an interview regarding your residential status. The language is bureaucratic and cold, but you've learned enough German to understand the critical phrase, suspected violation of conditions of stay. Your blood drops 10 degrees. You haven't violated anything. You work at a licensed school. You pay your taxes. You've never overstayed a single day. You call your school's administrative office. They tell you they received a similar inquiry from immigration and that they'll provide supporting documents, but they can't attend the interview with you. You're on your own. You go to the interview. The officer behind the desk has the emotional warmth of a filing cabinet. He asks you questions about your employment, your income, your daily activities. Then he asks if you've been engaged in any work outside your visa's authorized scope. You say no. He slides a document across the table. It's a report. An anonymous tip filed with Immigration Services alleging that you've been conducting private English lessons for cash payments outside your contracted school. The report is detailed.